Just finished dinner, and now I need a lid that fits this container for my leftovers. Okay, this one's not the right shape. And, this one's not the right size. Oh, here we go. The right shape, the right size. Perfect. Trying to match a lid with its container is a lot like finding two congruent figures. We want them to be the same shape and the same size so they fit perfectly together. Let's take these two figures, for example. Do you think these look congruent to each other? Why? Oh, hey, look at that. One fits perfectly on top of the other, so they are the same size and shape, making them congruent. I wonder if there's another way to compare shapes and determine whether they're congruent where we don't have to take one and move it on top of the other. Hey, I know. There are some math symbols we can use to make our comparison easier. Let's look at our congruent triangles again. Without putting them on top of each other and just comparing them side by side, which angles would be congruent to each other? This angle and this angle are in the same locations on each figure, meaning they're corresponding. Since the triangles are congruent, these corresponding angles are too. We can show that they're congruent by placing the same marking on each of them. Let's look at this angle next. Which angle in the other triangle is corresponding to it? Yeah, this one, since it's in the same location on the other triangle. Since they're congruent, we can give them the same markings as each other. Next, we can mark the final two corresponding angles to show they're congruent to each other using a marking like this. What else is congruent on these two triangles besides just the angles? The corresponding sides are congruent too. Let's show that by using matching hash marks on the corresponding sides. These two sides are the same length as each other, and these sides, and these sides. Now that these triangles have matching markings on their corresponding angles and sides, it doesn't matter how they're oriented. We'll still know that they are congruent triangles without having to line them up. Let's try an example problem using what we just learned. Let's determine whether these figures are congruent. Remember that if we can be sure that all the corresponding parts are congruent, then we'll know that these figures are congruent. Go ahead and compare the markings on them to help you decide. Pause the video now and take all the time you need to figure this out. Let's see here. I'm going to focus on the angles first. I notice these two are congruent since they have the same markings, and these two are congruent as well. Let's keep moving around these figures, following the same directions to make sure our symbols are in the same locations on each figure. Can we say that the next pair of corresponding angles are also congruent? They have the same symbols on them, so they are congruent. And what about the final angle on each of these? Yeah, those have the same markings, so they're congruent to each other too. Now, what about the corresponding sides? I see that these sides are corresponding because they're between these two corresponding angles, and they have a symbol showing they're congruent. The same is true about these sides. We know they're corresponding because they're located between the same corresponding angles as each other. And we know they're congruent because of this congruent symbol. What about the corresponding sides between these two angles? Are these corresponding sides congruent? I don't see any congruent symbols, so I don't know whether they are or not. And the same is true for these corresponding sides. We don't know whether they're congruent because there are no markings to tell us so. Because all the other corresponding angles and sides are congruent, but we don't know about these two pairs of corresponding sides, we can't say for certain that these figures are congruent. There is simply not enough information. There can even be another way to tell whether figures are congruent without using all these markings, especially when the figures are located on a graph. Take a look at these two rectangles. Do they look like they're the same size and shape to you? At first glance, you might think they're the same. I mean, all their angles are 90 degrees, and these short sides are each 2 units. But look closer at the long sides. The longer sides of this top rectangle are 9 units, and on this bottom rectangle, they're only 8 units. That means one rectangle is longer than the other, so these figures are not congruent. I have to say, I kind of like using a graph to compare figures. I can really see the side lengths clearly. What do you think? Try this next example and see how it feels for you. This says to determine whether the figures are congruent. This time we have 2 triangles to compare. Are they the same? Take a moment to look closely at these 2 triangles and decide. Pause the video now. To see whether these 2 triangles are congruent, let's start with comparing their corresponding sides. These shorter sides are both 3 units, so these sides are congruent. Let's look at these longer sides. How can we determine that they're the same length? We can count how we get from one end of each line to the other. Then, using our background knowledge about the Pythagorean theorem and distance formula, we can see that these are the same length. In this case, approximately 9.2 units. What about the third side on each triangle? Are these corresponding sides congruent too? If you haven't already used a method like our counting method from a moment ago, give that a try now. For both of these sides, moving 4 units and 6 units will get us from one end to the other. And we know, because of the Pythagorean theorem, that this means they will be the same length. Okay, great. We know that all 3 sides of one triangle match all 3 sides of the other. And what about the angles? Does it look like the corresponding angles have the same measures? Yeah, since the sides of these triangles used the same horizontal and vertical distances, the triangles are shaped the same way, so we know that these angles will be congruent too. These figures are the same shape and size, so they are congruent. Great job today deciding whether 2 figures are congruent or not. Just like finding the right lid for a container, we learned that congruent figures need to be the same shape and size. One way to check is to move one figure on top of the other to see whether they line up. But when we can't do that, we have 2 other helpful methods. We can compare corresponding sides and angles using congruence symbols to make sure matching parts are congruent. Or we can use a graph to count units and compare side lengths. Be sure to keep practicing working with congruent figures by completing the checklist on this lesson's cover sheet. Being confident in your abilities here will help you be successful in the rest of this unit. And remember, math is everywhere. Keep exploring.